All right, so this is the other tool, which is the hypo or hypothesis inspector. So let's load up a environment. So this is where we have our environment saved. This gives me a drop down of the available environments. This is the actual data set that you're going to be using. And then this is the field you're going to optimize on. So you create your problem context. So what that's going to do is it's going to look into that environment and find the most recent hypothesis, so sort of an ensemble hypothesis. So let's load that up, and we can see here that it's an ensemble of 17 actually different hypotheses strung together. So if you go in there, it's a very similar interface to the other tool. Resize it here a second. Okay, so it's very similar. Basically, it allows you to explore this hypothesis. More these other panels are more interesting here. So again, we get a random property. You can see here this is this number of property, and then we can get the results. So the results are much more complex. So we have 17 different results. So we see that this one's about 126,000, and the actual was 129,000. So that's a pretty good result. So we see that there's the average. We take into account certain neighborhoods. So this is in Mitchell, so that's apparently not a good neighborhood. And again, I should say that this is pre-trained, and basically it's a greedy algorithm, so it looks at iteratively the best results. So in each step, it looks for the best performing result, the one that reduces the error the most. So that's this value, this error CM, reduces this value the most. So this value, see, we can see here it's about 18K, which is about 10% of the average value. So you can see here that this 17 of these gets us within about 10% of the, on average, of the house price, the actual sale price of the house. So, so we see that this is accounted for the neighborhood, and then it takes into account the greater living area. And then it takes into account the, interestingly enough, so this is an interesting aspect, the neighborhood again. So as I said before, the order matters. So once you've done the neighborhood, it won't take the neighborhood again, because it's already accounted for that. But if you actually now account for a different variable, then it opens up the possibility of actually accounting for the neighborhood again. So that this greater living area might have changed the data in such a way that the neighborhood could then again take a nonlinear effect. So it'll take given that you've now accounted for a different variable, in this case living area, it can now sort of squeeze more juice out of that sort of location aspect. And we'll see that this comes up again and again, how important the location is actually to the sale price. Once you start accounting for different variables, we can see that we're able to get more error, or sort of reduce the error time and time again. So the square footage seems to be very important. So first of all, the second most important thing is the greater living area. And then once we've taken into account the area again, we look at square footage again. So this time the basement square footage. The third one is overall condition. So in this data set, there's a sort of overall condition. I think it's between 1 and 10. And so that's obviously, it's a sort of qualitative evaluation of the home, and so that's seemingly somewhat important. And then we look at the kitchen quality. So we start to account for that, and then again neighborhood pops up. So again, even though you've accounted for all that sort of stuff, if you sort of subtract that away from the results, then we can account for the area again, and that's another 16K accounted for. And then the garage area. So again, square footage really seems to matter in this data set. And then we take into account MS subclass, which I can't remember MS subclass is. Just think about it quickly. Since here, yes. So the actual type of home, so that makes sense. And again, the location. This one's the basement quality, so again, qualitative assessment of the basement. And then we take into account, this one is, oh, yeah, so this one is memorized. So what this one is yeah, basically, sometimes you have a result in the data set that's an aberration. And so sometimes again, every time you sort of account for something, you look at all the different ways you can kind of reduce the error. In this case, what I found is it can reduce the error the most if it just memorizes one property. And so that's sort of the outlier detection functionality. So it says, well, if the property is a outlier, then what that means is I can reduce the error the most if I just memorize that property. And so obviously you don't want to do that too often, but you can see that if it's competing with other hypothesis to reduce the error, and all of a sudden it says to you, well, I can reduce the error the most if I just remember this one property, that this property is an aberration and it's not very important. And then what that's telling you, I would argue, is that it's an outlier, and so it's something that we can kind of ignore. But it comes up naturally rather than just someone saying, well, it looks like to be an outlier, so I'll ignore that data. In this case, it actually has found that no, it is an outlier, because it outcompeted some of the other ones. So again, square footage comes into account again. So the unfinished basement square footage, then above fireplaces, and finally, again, the location. So after that, the algorithms weren't able to find too much more. At least it was just taking too long. I think I just cut it off, and so that's how the results are kind of broken down. It gives you all the details, and so you can kind of go through the details. But it's rolled up into a nice single value for you, and it tells you there's a certain number of estimates. It's a mixture of distributions, and this tells you that the results, the center measure was this. The dispersion is that. So if you again think of this as just a probability distribution rather than a single result, and that's the dispersion on it. So it's 1 standard deviation is 36K, and then this gives you kind of estimate of the strength of that result. So if I had 2 million, an n of 2 million, you could be very assured that this is the result. But if I had an n of, like, say 4, it would be difficult to count on that result. And then the hypo panel here is interesting because what it does is it breaks down all the different hypos. So it actually describes, rather than in the context of a specific result, it says, here's in general what I found. And so you can see here that the first one is the average, and then we have the location, and then this one is the greater living area, and then again location. You'll notice that these values are different from the ones up here because it's just it's accounting for things in different orders, and so as it adjusts for the different factors, it does things in different ways. But in general, they will produce in kind of magnitude. I think that's all I want to discuss. Okay, thanks again for listening. Cheers, bye.